A Democrat and a Republican sit down for a chat. Robert is joined by Matt Hasty, a veteran who ran as a Republican for Louisiana's 5th congressional district that was later won by Luke Letlow. Letlow passed away from complications from COVID and was unable to take office. The cordial chat includes topics like the effects of forever wars, medical marijuana, and racial issues. Hasty also weighs in on requests from listeners about Sarah Huckabee Sanders and Marjorie Taylor Greene.
All right, welcome, Matt. Thanks for joining on Super Bowl Sunday today. I'm curious which team you're pulling for. You have any skin in the game today?
Well, no, not really. The Saints got knocked out, so I'm kind of two minds of it. I'm not a fan of a division rival being in the Super Bowl at all, but there's that whole Tom Brady, aspect to it. So I don't have any specific skin in the game. I'm really just hoping it's going to be good,
Yeah, I think Brady has enough rings on him, so I'm going to pull for the Chiefs today.
Yeah, but you got to admire what he's doing. I mean, the age he's at and at the level he's still playing. When he went from the Patriots to the Bucs, that was that big question, at least I had, was, this is a great opportunity to see, is it Belichick or Brady or both that's kind of, making this magic happen in New England. And I don't know if the question was completely answered, but we do at least know Tom Brady still got what it takes to take a team to the Super Bowl.
Oh, that is true. I mean, and I give him kudos for that. And we'll see what happens today, and may the best team win. But I'll still say I think he's got plenty of rings.
Yeah. Spread the wealth a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. which may lead to part of our conversation today. So thanks again for joining. You're from Louisiana there, Matt, right?
Oh, yes, sir. I joined the military in January of 2000 and then kind of became a citizen of the world. But this is home. This is where I joined from. So after I got out, came back home, became involved in some politics. But Louisiana is where I'm going to be hanging my hat.
And more specifically, looked at the district that you ran in, where in Louisiana? Because it looked like more northeast Louisiana, was it?
Oh, yeah. So the district I ran in was the 5th congressional district. So it's the largest district in Louisiana because it's got so much rural property in it. So it goes all the way from the northeast part of Louisiana, and it actually hooks around the little L, and it goes all the way down to the Florida parishes right above New Orleans. So it includes, Ruston, Monroe, Alexandria, some of the bigger towns, but the geographical area is spread out a lot. So the district has a lot of conflicting beliefs right now just because you've got some of the cities, Ruston, Monroe, Alexandria. I'll always believe that the political beliefs of people in a city are always going to be just a little bit different than those of people who live out in the country, just because of the nature of the way we live.
That never happens in Georgia. I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, and man, because we've kind of forgotten that this, that's not a new debate. If you go back and study the history of our country, that debate is what gave us 2 chambers of Congress. Like the founders saw this problem coming and they gave us a solution, and I guess we just, over time we were like, no, this not working, that's not working.
Right. And I was actually looking up your district. I didn't realize, I had heard the story about Luke Letlow, but I didn't realize that was your district. So I don't know, do you know Luke, or I'm sure you heard the story, but had you ever met him or anything?
Oh, yeah. We ran against each other, so we met at town halls and, campaign events, because the parish, Louisiana has parish, not counties. So our parish Republican councils, each one of them would meet with the candidates, not every single one of them, but like the Rapides Parish Council met with all of the candidates, and it was a good opportunity for me to sit down and talk to them. And, because Louisiana has something called a jungle primary where everybody runs against everybody. There's not the Democrat versus Republican. So then after the primary, he won, and then another gentleman passed on into the runoff. And I bring that up because the day that he won that first primary, he called me. And he talked to me for a long time and let me know that he had respected the way I spoke during the campaign. He asked for my endorsement, and we sat down for about an hour where we just talked about a lot of stuff. And he earned he earned my support, and he also earned my respect. As I spoke to the man, me and him were roughly the same age, and I could just tell that he was a very passionate person when it came to serving. And my experience has been in the military, and I don't have a high opinion of politicians. So to sit down and talk to a man who had kind of taught, he spent a large portion of his adult life involved in politics, I kind of sat down with a certain picture of the man. And just over the course of that lunch, man, he made me believe in him. And so I endorsed him happily. We got to know each other. I attended his victory party on the actual election date, the 4th of November. And he went into the hospital not too long after that. So, we weren't old friends, but we had become close. He actually had asked for my help on his staff if he had won, but not an official job. He wanted some help with, veteran issues and stuff like that. But it shocked me. It shocked all of us. He was a healthy man.
Yeah, he wasn't that old, was he? 30-something?
Oh, no, he was 40. I think he was 41, actually.
Oh, 41.
But
okay.
No pre-existing conditions, no underlying causes. He literally got checked into the hospital with COVID. And then over the course of his treatment, they had to give him some surgery. And then I think he had a cardiac event during the surgery or maybe after. And, yeah. So it was a terrible, horrible thing. His wife is running right now for the seat in a special election to try to carry on his legacy. And I've already spoke to her. She's got my support, and I think she's going to win.
Gotcha. Yeah, you never know. I had a former stepbrother that was killed in Afghanistan. And, and then several former family members that served in the war and, survived and all. So I have a firm respect for anybody that has served our country. And
I'm sorry for your loss, man.
I will appreciate it. It is what it is. But, but to have something like this whole, COVID, pandemic hitting us all and affecting us in so many ways, and to have won a congressional seat and then just have that pulled out from up under you and that kind of way.
Man, to be at the top of the world, that had to be, like I said, I wasn't an old friend of his, but for me, that would have been the pinnacle of my life. He had a beautiful family. His wife was just wonderful. He has 2 young children that are just, they're as happy as they can be. And at that night, during that victory party, he was, all smiles ear to ear. You have to imagine that he was on top of the world. And then just not too long after that, it reminds us all. And it better than a lot of Americans because you've lost someone close to you in combat. But veterans know it better than most that you got to appreciate this stuff while it's here because you never know. You absolutely never know. But I think one of the biggest problems we have with this pandemic is that I see a lot of these things as symptoms of a problem that nobody's really paying attention to, which is I think there is a problem in America with nobody believes anything anymore. Nobody believes the media. Nobody believes the government because they have both cultivated this environment over decades of exaggeration and sensationalization and, flat out lying, and now we're in a situation where information is crucial, information like unbiased, factual information is very important and nobody believes it. So you've got some people that don't believe the pandemic is happening at all. And then you've got another section out there that, the guys wear their masks inside their home, so I just think a lot of the problems we're having right now with the deaths, with the shutdowns, with the way it's being handled is there's a big problem with the mistrust of our systems, and we're seeing it right now.
Yeah, and I completely agree. But going back to, before we get too far away from it, one of your topics that you had talked about or wanted to cover here would be forever wars. And one of those would be Afghanistan. And that kind of hits, close to home for me. But what are your thoughts on that? Because I know you served in the military. You said was it Korea? Where else? Was it Germany as well?
Oh yeah, I joined the military in January of 2000, and I just retired. I did 20 years active duty, and I just retired January of last year.
Mm-hmm.
So I did a tour in Iraq, I did a tour in Afghanistan, I did a tour in another country in the Middle East, and then I did Korea, several tours of Germany. I mean, I even lived in Manhattan for a year, working with FEMA. So my problem, the forever wars are a subject that's very near and dear to me, and it's something I'm passionate about. And it's because I've lost a lot of friends. And I lost a friend in Afghanistan, and I have friends that lost their limbs. And a lot of this is just part of being a soldier. I mean, that's what war is. War is just terrible. So you're going to have these things where you lose, your brothers and sisters next to you, and that they're going to lose, parts of their lives. The most disturbing thing about me, the most disturbing thing to me about these wars is the apathy. It's the apathy among the elected officials, and excuse me to all your listeners. I don't want to breach this contract we have of thank you for your service and silent service, for lack of a better way to put it. But I'm very angry with the elected officials and the people that are sending them to Washington. I've lost one friend in comment. I've lost 5 to suicide. And we are in Afghanistan. We are in Iraq. We are in Syria. We are in Somalia. We're in Yemen. We are in 7 countries in the world in active combat. That's soldiers sleeping on cots with weapons, beside them, with 210 rounds of ammunition within arm's reach. We have 800 bases outside of our borders. France, Britain, and Russia combined have about 30. I think we allowed what happened after 9/11 and the justified action that followed to morph into something that politicians have used to create stability, to create kind of a political bargaining chip that they can move around the chessboard. Let me ask you a question real quick, and this is for your listeners as well. Have you heard of the Afghanistan papers?
It's been a while. It's not top of mind. I'd have to go find them.
Yeah, and a lot of people, and that's what I usually get, is that it sounds familiar, because it was a story a while back that was very big. But it was named after the Pentagon Papers because of what the Pentagon Papers revealed about Vietnam, which was that the United States government knew for years, you're talking a very long time, they knew that the war in Vietnam was not winnable. All of the information had been put out within the government, but just nobody cared. Everybody was just going along with it for political reasons. And you're talking about tens of thousands of men and women who died for these reasons, fighting a war that existed only for political reasons. Well, the Afghanistan papers came out, I really think it was about 10 years ago, and they said the same thing, the exact same thing, that the war in Afghanistan...
Doing a quick look back, it looks like they came out in the press around December 2019.
Okay, so it's December 2019? No, it's got to be further back.
Now, the papers may have actually been drafted or whatever, circulated earlier than that, but it looks like it hit the press mostly around December 2019. So,
okay, then I'm really wrong then, and I apologize. I thought it came out. I thought it came out much earlier than that. I might be talking about something else. Maybe what they're called. Maybe what we're calling the Afghan, maybe they were called something else. I'm not sure though, and I'll accept if I'm wrong. It happens many times. But what's very important to me is that people understand that our government right now, the Pentagon right now, your elected officials right now, they all know that this war is unwinnable. They all know that the progress that we're being made, the progress that we are making is superficial at best. And there's no timeline on the horizon for us to be out of here. There's no timeline on the horizon for your military to come back home. This is the new standard. And until our elected officials and the people that send them to Washington, D.C. understand that and start to push back against the wars, they're not going to go anywhere. We know this from the lessons of Vietnam. And I think that that's one of the reasons that people don't like talking about this, is because a lot of people know what happened with Vietnam, and we know that it was a huge, debacle that we should have never been involved, not for that long anyway. And I feel like now we're kind of making the same mistake, and people don't want to see it. The word Afghanistan was not mentioned once during the presidential debates. The presidential debates, the word Afghanistan did not come up one time. The word veterans came up one time, and it was when they were throwing it at each other. I support our veterans. No, you don't. I support our veterans. And then that was it. And as a soldier, as somebody who is, like I said, I just lost my 5th friend to suicide. And, these are all combat veterans. It just breaks your heart to see stuff like this. And I just think the American people in general have accepted something that should not be acceptable.
Mm-hmm. And you're not alone. I have other opinions of some of these politicians here, but Senator Rand Paul, Senator Gillibrand, Representative Gabbard. There's an interesting quote here I'm finding from Representative Gabbard, said that the congressional inquiry into lying and wasting taxpayer dollars and lives of U.S. service members, she accused the military-industrial complex, contractors, and consultancy companies from profiting a scam that ripped the U.S. taxpayers off for trillions of dollars since 9/11 in Afghanistan alone. So
Tulsi Gabbard's a veteran.
Yeah.
She's a veteran.
Yeah, and you're not alone. I have had some struggles in the past with mental health, and I remember meeting a veteran, along my path through all that. And there's another gentleman that I was talking to along the way there too. He remembers being given painkillers almost like they were candy. I think it was OxyContin along the way. And my eyes just, because OxyContin now, a doctor is so scared even to prescribe it to you. But yet, when he was in the military, they would just walk in, they give you a whole bottle of it, and it wasn't a big deal.
Well, and the good news for me and for you and for the people who suffer from, mental health issues is that we've gotten better at it. I mean, we all got to admit that. I mean, it's definitely not where it should be. But if you look back on the way just soldiers were treated with PTSD, even 50, 60 years ago, we've improved a lot. And here's one reason I say that. My mental health issues really happened the last year I was in the Army, and I was very lucky to have a great chain of command that gave me the time and the resources I needed to work on it. But I mean, I dealt with, psychiatrists, psychologists, pharmacists, primary care managers, you name it, any kind of specialist you can think of, because I had what you would describe as a breakdown. But eventually we went through all these processes. We tried a lot of medication. At one point I was taking so many pills that it was a handful of pills. I remember that, like, I couldn't hold them all in one hand, because you have to take the primary pills for your, symptoms, and then you have to take the other pills to counteract the negative side effects of your first pills. But eventually I got to the point where the doctor wrote all the way to the Pentagon. My doctor at the time wrote, I don't remember who she had to write to, but somebody at approval all the way at the Pentagon got permission to prescribe me Marinol, which is medical marijuana. Marinol is just THC wrapped in sesame oil. That's all it is. And now I take 2 pills. That's it. And I've become, I don't want to say adjusted, but I've become healthy enough mentally that I can have these conversations with you that we're having right now, which is a big deal to somebody who's suffering. And I didn't mean to walk you right into medical marijuana if you weren't ready for it, but I think the forever wars and the veterans that they're producing and allowing doctors to prescribe medicine based on science instead of cultural belief is a very, very important step we all need to take.
Oh, no, I firmly agree with you. Now, Louisiana, have they legalized it there for medical use?
They do have medical marijuana, and it's getting better as well. I don't want to disparage the progress that's being made, but last year I went to try to get my prescription because I can't get my medical marijuana through the VA. I can't get that thing that the Army prescribed me. I can't get it through the VA because it's, federally restricted. So I tried to get it on the through the civilian healthcare system. It cost $500 in total for the appointment, and then the medicine itself costs about $500 for the monthly dose. So you're talking, it exists, I guess is what I'm getting at. But one of the things about Louisiana's 5th District is we're one of the poorest districts in the entire nation. The average income is about $30,000. So people who need this kind of medication, for them to be able to spend $500 a month on it is not realistic.
Yeah. And anybody that's thinking about that district or trying to visualize it, you border Mississippi.
Oh yeah, the top of it borders Arkansas, and it borders Mississippi all the way around, and then over on the east side it even borders Florida. So it's a huge district.
Mm-hmm. But that's one of the, and not to call out or point out or anything, but that's a very poor district when you look at income levels, educational levels. That's quite a district when you look at and comparing it to others around the nation. Yeah.
Well, that's one of the reasons I came back here. I grew up here, and you come back and nothing's gotten better. 20 years I've been gone, and it's the same place I left.
Not too different from South Georgia. That's where I was growing up down in Albany in Southwest Georgia. It's not too different than that. I live in Metro Atlanta now. I moved up here, quite some time ago, but it's a very similar situation down there too.
Yeah, I did some training at a National Guard facility in Macon, I think it was. And Macon's got a lot of history. So I when I went through there, I was it's very poor.
Yep. You have Atlanta, Savannah, and about the rest of Georgia. That's about it here. Yeah. But talking about medical costs, and Will and I had backburnered it because of all the stuff that had gone on in D.C., and we did a couple episodes on that. We're going to get back around to it. But I was chatting with some friends recently, and I believe it was an HIV medication that someone was talking about. That medication, when I priced it just on GoodRx, I was curious, $3,300 a month.
Yeah.
For this particular medication. And I think you mentioned yours is $500. That's not sustainable.
Yeah. And part of the problem we've got in this country with our health care, especially with the cost of medicine, is that it's not spread equally across the world in terms of the amount of money that people are paying for pills or medication. And where our system has so much interference from the public sector that the prices get drawn, they have to get drawn up just for hospitals to be able to remain solvent. Do you know what I'm saying? If you look up how much hospitals recover from what they bill, Medicare and Medicaid, it's a net loser. They end up losing thousands and millions of dollars on this stuff every year. So the only place for them to pass on those the negative profits, they have to charge private insurance more money. They have to charge people more money for their pills. They have to charge more money for the devices just to remain solvent, because hospitals have to pay their doctors. They have to pay their staff. So I see so many things in our country, and I know this makes me sound like a guy who lives in a trailer on a piece of land, so stay with me here. But I see so many problems in our country that the government is not going to be able to fix these issues until we fix our government. Everything that if you look around, you look at the problems with immigration, you look at the problems with the cost of student loans, you look at the problems with skyrocketing debt, unemployment, you can draw a direct line between all these problems and government being involved in it. So that's just my old Republican libertarian take on it, though. So
yeah, I hear you. Another topic that you wanted to cover there, and geographically, I'm sure, because I looked up the 5th District per Wikipedia, The 5th district there is 62% white, 34% black, and 2% Hispanic, and then the other races are less than 1%. So it will be racial issues. So I'm curious, living in that area and what you've seen or what your take on all that is.
Well, if I start to ramble, you make sure to cut me off, because this is another issue I'm glad you give me the opportunity, because this is another issue I'm kind of passionate about, because I grew, like you said, I grew up in this area, which is a deep South area. This 5th district, you're talking rural Louisiana. So I grew up around racists. I grew up around white people who were raised by racists. And I didn't know any black people. That was just the way I was raised, is that, and it was all the way up until my parents got divorced. And then when my parents got divorced and I was 10, my mom had to work 3 jobs to support us. And we were still on, government assistance. So I lived around a lot of poor people, okay? And in this country, if you're poor, disproportionately, that means you're going to be black. And that doesn't mean all poor people are black, doesn't mean all black people are poor. It just says disproportionately as a percentage of the population. But anyway, I didn't interact with a lot of black people. The black people I interacted with before I joined the military, they were the guys traditionally that stole from me. They were the guys traditionally that tried to beat me up. But when I joined the military, my entire perspective changed. And the reason, and it'll do that for any veteran, because as soon as you get thrown into a Humvee with somebody, you ain't got no choice. You're going to have to talk to this guy. You're going to have to get to know him. And over time, I saw things differently. And I'm going to tell you a little. I'm at Fort Gordon, Georgia, which is the home of the United States Army Signal Corps, the communications teams. And I was in a room with all the other instructors because we were receiving some equal opportunity training. You have to do this every quarter in the military. And I remember it was right after President Obama got elected. And I remember our equal opportunity instructor. I don't remember anything she said before or after this, but I remember she said, because the president is now a black man, any disparaging comments about the president are going to be treated as EO complaints. And, it upset me for a couple of reasons, which is, first of all, if you're in the military, you can't make any disparaging comments about any president, not publicly anyway, right? He's the top of the chain of command. But the other side of it is, it really bothered me that we were treating a president differently now because of his race. But I looked around the room, and there were about 40 people in there. And I remember, just because of whatever reason, the assignments, the jobs in the military, there were about 40 people in this room, and there were 3 white people. Most of the people in this room were black people. There were black men, black women, and a few Hispanic. But if you looked around, I, as a white man, was in the minority. And for the first time in my life, I felt my skin color. I had never done that before. And, it didn't last long, because immediately I remembered, outside of that room and outside of that building and outside of that post, 70% of the population looks like me. But in that moment, when I felt my skin color, when I felt my race, it kind of opened my eyes to a lot of things. And I embarked on this journey of research, trying to become better educated on all of our racial problems. So anyway, like I said, I ramble sometimes. The biggest problem we have in our country right now is the misunderstanding about unconscious bias. We have a lot of problems with racism, but what I can't speak for white people, and I can't speak to black people, because we're both groups, and I can only speak as an individual to an individual. So you're going to have to forgive my generalizations here. It's just a way of making the conversation flow better. But what black people don't understand about racism nowadays, modern racism, and I say that as somebody who knows a lot of racists, okay? The most racist people I know, they do not believe that all black people are N-words, okay? They believe that some black people are N-words based on their behavior. And I know this doesn't make it better. I'm not trying to justify it in any way. All I'm doing is trying to provide some context for how we've progressed in terms of generationally racism. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Because the people that I'm talking about now, their parents saw all black people as N-words, okay?
Mm-hmm.
The children nowadays, the boomers or the 50 and 60-year-olds that I know that are racist, they don't see it like that. My generation today has transitioned to a place that you don't even talk about these things. This is not even something you say out loud. We've moved the pendulum so far away from being racist that now you can't even talk about racism. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Am I rambling again?
No, yeah. I'm with you.
Okay. So the problems that we have right now when people say systematic racism and everything like that, what they're really talking about is the unconscious bias that we all have as people toward other people that look like us. And it's not evil. It's not wrong. It's just biology. It's called a mirror bias, and we all have it. It's part of mental health. It's part of psychology to study all these things. Okay? When you walk into a room, you prefer the people that look like. And if you don't think so, imagine for just a second that you have a choice between entering two rooms. One of them has 99 white people. One of them has 99 black people. Are you going to pick the room that is more comfortable for you or not? And that's a question we all have to ask ourselves individually. And once we can come to grips with that fact, that we prefer people that look like us, we can start to open our eyes to the unconscious way that black Americans have been closed off from avenues of opportunity, not consciously, unconsciously, that association that has happened historically, culturally for so many years. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and it puts it in another explanation that I think our neighbors around us can hopefully sit down and listen to this 10-minute explanation and hopefully rationally listen to this.
Oh, man, tell me I did not just talk for 10 minutes.
On that particular topic, 5 or 10 minutes, yeah. But I think it's a good thing because a lot of times, no, it's not a need to apologize. A lot of times you work for a company, because at my company, we've had this unconscious bias training per se. And I remember at the former company, this unconscious bias training was scheduled. You know, the employees were asked to go in, managers, and it was noticed at one of these sessions, a row of white men just got up and left. And I think they were smirking as they left the room, and they were called out for it. And there's going to be there's going to be this period of transition that we're all going to have to deal with, because there's a lot. I've tried to talk to my parents about this. I've tried to talk to people from that generation about this, and it's very difficult to get over that hump. You know, there's a lot of ingrained beliefs when you're raised with those values. Do you see what I'm saying? And my parents didn't raise me as racist. I mean, there was never a feeling that people were inferior because of their skin color. When I was raised, we didn't interact with a lot of black people. But the best way to get training on unconscious bias that I have found, I don't know if this is going to be suitable for your radio cast. Do you want to give it a shot? Go ahead. So it's called the bat and the ball problem. Have you ever heard of it? I don't think so, no.
Okay, so a bat and a ball together cost $1.10. Okay? The bat cost $1 more than the ball. How much is the ball?
10 cents.
10 cents. That's the one that jumps right out at you, okay? And there's nothing wrong with that. I don't want you to think what I'm about to say is meant to disparage you or anyone else who got 10 cents. You have to understand this is a brain trick, okay? If the ball costs 10 cents and the bat costs $1 more than the ball, then the bat would be $1.10. $1.10 plus the ball, which is 10 cents, equals $1.20. The ball is 5 cents because $1 more than the ball is $1.05 plus the 5 cents for the ball gives you $1.10. Now, anybody who's listening, you can feel free to pause it, go back, write it down. I didn't trick you. I did not trick you. Okay, it's a brain trick, And the reason that it's useful in identifying unconscious bias is our brains have to take shortcuts. We're assaulted by millions of pieces of information every second. So in order for our brain to function, it has to categorize things. It has to classify information. When we put up that $1.10, $1 more, 10 cents this, our brain saw those nice round numbers. Do you know what I'm saying? And they classified the problem. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense? And we said, oh, well, it's 10 cents. And then even because you knew it was probably a trick and you thought about it for a second, you still couldn't see any other option because our brain had already classified that math problem. Okay? That's what happens when our brain categorizes information. Now, if you apply that to the real world, when you are walking out in public, we classify people all day long. We have to. When we see a fireman, we need to classify that person as a fireman. And the reason is very, very primal. We have to understand where the threats are coming from. So when we look at someone, if I see a biker who very much looks like a guy who deals crystal meth and who could beat me up just from looking at me, I'm going to classify that person as a potential danger. I don't know anything about him. You know, for all I know, he could be a great Christian man. But based on his appearance, I will classify him. Do you see what I'm saying? And I know a lot of people this probably sounds familiar to and you don't want to admit it, but that's okay. This is what we do as people. This is how our brains function. And once we understand that, we can understand that unconscious, and all you have to do is look in a high school lunchroom and you'll see it, but that unconscious preference for the people that look like us. Once we can spread that awareness further, that's how we fight racism in 2021. That's the next level of equality in our country.
Yeah. And 2 or 3 things for my personal experience. I one of the best gifts to myself, for whatever reason, I went to all public schools my entire life. I went all the way through my master's degree, but they were all the way, public schools. But I remember from kindergarten through the middle of 5th grade, I was still in Southwest Georgia, but the county was Worth County, and probably about 30 to 40% black. So I remember a lot of black friends that I had growing up from kindergarten to 5th grade, and then
that means your school had it had twice the average number of black Americans at it. That's good. You had a disproportionate number of black Americans.
Yeah. And then in the middle of 5th grade, we moved up to Lee County, which is just north of Albany, and that dropped to probably less than 3 or 4% black. So it was quite a culture shock for me, growing up with all those different friends. But I actually valued that time that I was in, kindergarten through 5th grade. And,
and you got access to perspective. Oh, I'm sorry, brother. Go ahead.
No, that's good. Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, as you had access to those different perspectives, to have more black friends as a young kid, that's what I very much learned about the military, or that's what I learned from the military, was the value of these perspectives. Like I said, when you're in a Humvee with somebody, you're talking about a racist Italian from Brooklyn, a militant black guy from Oakland, a guy who grew up on a farm in Illinois. Mm-hmm. And you've all got to sit down and talk to each other. You're forced to kind of by the military, because military is just a whole lot of hurry up and wait. So you spend a lot of time sitting around talking to each other. And once you open your eyes to those other perspectives, it kind of lets you realize, there's nothing wrong. We're all the hero in our own story. The way I see the world, the way you see the world, none of it's wrong. But we have to understand that the way we see the world is not the way it is seen by everybody. And it's a good thing that you learned that early. I'm trying to teach my daughter that early.
Yeah, that's a good thing. So I want to call out, we are up to 42 minutes, and a Republican and a Democrat have not killed each other on the telephone yet. So I want to call that out.
And it sounds like we agree about a lot of the stuff.
Exactly. But I want to get your opinion on a couple of different things, because I was talking to a friend that was in Arkansas. So you're closer to Arkansas than I am. Your thoughts on Sarah Huckabee Sanders running for governor of Arkansas?
I just, if the people want to elect her, just let her get elected. I really think we have to get away from visceral hatred on both sides, Republicans toward Democrats, Democrats toward Republicans, and anyone associated with Donald Trump is automatically the most polarizing. And I just think Sarah Huckabee Sanders is her own person. And whatever job she held before that, is that what you're talking about, her association to Trump, or is there something else that I'm missing?
Any of the above. I'm just curious what your thoughts are about her. Because the only thing that I know about her, and then I guess her last name being tied to, was it her dad, was it? Mike Huckabee? And then she was press secretary for some time, during Trump's. That's the only two things I really know about her. So.
Yeah. I wish her the best of luck. I'm not a fan of either party. I vote Republican just because I'm a conservative. But, I really hope she stays true to her people. That's the one thing I think Donald Trump brought out that not a lot of people are seeing, is that there's something bubbling at the bottom of society. And people are fed up. And if she's going to be able to focus that to more constructive means than destructive means, hey, more power to her. We elected the Terminator, or California elected the Terminator, and I think it was Missouri that elected Jesse Ventura. So Arkansas could probably handle Sarah Huckabee Sanders.
And then the other lady that has replaced Trump in the top story in politics, but Marjorie Taylor Greene. Do you have any thoughts about her?
Well, first of all, the claims that she's making are out there. So any defense of Marjorie Taylor Greene in the media and in conversations is automatically going to be seen as an endorsement of her beliefs. And I want to say that up front. This is not what that is. I didn't even understand some of the stuff. The thing with the laser from space in California, I read that thing 3 times and I still don't know what she was talking about. So, but now, having said that, that woman is a duly elected representative of the United States Congress. The people of her district elected her to the United States Congress. And the Democrats who are in power in Congress, they can not like her. They can disagree with her. They can think that she's a horrible person. But I don't think they should fire her, which is not what they did. I know we can clarify here in just a second. But I don't think they should remove her from her duties based on things that were said on social media before she got elected. The people of the district knew who she was. It's just like Trump. They knew who she was. They sent her to Washington, D.C. And it's not at least in my opinion, it's not the place of the leaders of Congress to say to the people of Georgia, no, we're not going to accept this person. So I don't agree with the things she said. She openly said that Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib should go back to the Middle East. Rashida Tlaib was born in Detroit. She liked some Facebook posts and insinuated, didn't say it outright, but she insinuated that Nancy Pelosi should be shot for treason. There's a couple of things like this that I don't agree with. She shouldn't have said these things, but I don't think likes and comments on social media should be enough to remove the citizens of Georgia's, I forget what it is, I think it's the 14th district, remove their representative from Congress. What do you think?
I'm agreeing with some of what you're saying. I live in the 11th district, so I border the 14th. And a little more history about Marjorie. She tried to run for District 6. Do you remember when Karen Handel ran against John Ossoff years ago?
No.
Okay, so that was the most expensive congressional race that was ever run in the nation at the time. And the 6th district is basically northern metro Atlanta. And that district had been drawn and had mostly been Republican for quite some time. Karen Handel had been a career politician, and she had been the past Secretary of State of Georgia. And so she ran against, at the time, John Ossoff, who recently won the Senate race here in Georgia. But at the time, again, this was several years ago, they ran the most expensive congressional race in the nation, and Karen Handel won it. So fast forward a couple of years, this last time around, Marjorie Greene threw some of her own money into that race, and she was going to primary Karen Handel. And I believe someone sat her down and told her that basically what's coming out of your mouth, you're not going to win this district. So she ends up jumping over my District 11 to 14 to find her a district where she could win, because Tom Graves, that was in 14, decided not to rerun. So she went out to 14, which is extremely Republican and red. More so.
I'm just curious,
how my district.
Was it like was she already close to the border, or did she pack up and move, 4 hours away?
Oh,
I don't know that it really matters now that I asked that question. I don't know that it really, it's still kind of, I get what you're saying. It's kind of, I guess you could call it cheap maybe, but that's what we draw districts for. If you look at Louisiana's 6th district, it's a district that is literally drawn on the map to make sure that we can get a Democrat. If you take a look at it, that's all it is. They drew a line that encompasses parts of New Orleans and parts of Baton Rouge, cities that are hours apart. But it was a line that was drawn just to make sure that one of the congressional districts from Louisiana was a Democrat. And me personally, I don't have a problem with it. I don't. I think we need to talk about gerrymandering. I think we need to come up with some kind of standard on how we draw on these lines. But there are a lot of Democrats in Louisiana. Our governor is a Democrat. So the idea that out of 6 elected Congress people to, Congress, that none of them would be a Democrat, maybe we should draw lines for that reason. And if Marjorie Taylor Greene more identifies with the values of the 14th district than the 11th, maybe she should have moved there a long time ago. But yeah, I agree with you. Just moving there just to kind of run for Congress, I agree with you. It's America.
Right.
She can do that.
And there's a bit of hypocrisy there too. And I know that I'm drawing a little bit of a straw here, but I must call out Karen Handel, because Karen Handel and John Ossoff had a debate, and Karen Handel tried to claim that John Ossoff didn't even live in his district. So John Ossoff, the Democrat, or Karen Handel, the Republican, claiming the same thing, and yet Marjorie Greene has to jump over my district to go find her one she can win.
Oh yeah, but there's 435 members of the House, 100 in the Senate. I bet we could line them up and find hypocrisy on every single one of them.
Oh yeah. But then, more specifically, my district, District 11, Barry Loudermilk, who has been in that seat for quite some time, his district is northwest Metro Atlanta. But there's a sliver. I'm literally across the street from District 6, which is now Lucy McBath's district, because I'm gerrymandered into this little sliver. But there's another remote friend of mine that's also in District 11, and she says, I have nothing in common with these folks that are way out. And, but Barry Loudermilk, he doesn't do town halls. And I remember seeing something on your campaign page that you actually advocated for a 24/7 webcam in your congressional office, which I thought was pretty cool.
Oh, yeah. I'm a big – you got to remember, man, I'm an old poor guy. I grew up very poor, and then I joined the military. And so all of my knowledge about government, it comes from me living with the government for 20 years, and it comes from the things I've studied. And I really think that we only accept our modern political bullcrap because we've kind of forgotten the values of our Constitution. Everybody who's in Washington, D.C. works for us, and we don't trust them. Nobody.
Allegedly, they do.
If did not vote had been a candidate during the 2016 election, during the 2020 election, they would have won in a landslide. It wouldn't have even been close. You know what I'm saying? The vast majority of people that are in the United States are taking a look at these two candidates, and they don't see a difference. They're seeing, I can have this kind of bull crap or I can have that kind of bull crap. Nothing about their individual lives is going to get better. It can only get worse. And people see that, and they say, what's the point? I'm just going to take care of my family and try to keep my head down. Add on top of that, all of the people on the Democratic side and Republican side who are just swallowing the pill they don't want to take. People that walk into the voting booth and go, I don't like Joe Biden, but I really don't like Donald Trump. See, that's not what leadership is supposed to be. So I think in order to raise that behavior, we need to remember that with the technology that we have today, imagine what the checks and balances would have looked like if the Constitution was written today. Body cams, webcams, financial transparency. Think about using the internet to track your elected representative and everybody they meet with. If there is a closed-door meeting between your congressperson and a lobbyist, explain to me why you shouldn't have a camera in that room. The only reason is because they don't want you to see what's going on. And if they're your elected representatives, that's not their right. This coming from somebody who is a private in the Army, there is really no reason that a congressman should have so much freedom and a private have so little. They're both serving their country. They're both agreeing to put the nation's well-being above their own well-being. So I think once you get elected to federal government, you lose a lot of rights, and one of them needs to be privacy while you're working.
But I will say this, Marjorie Greene, she did hold a town hall. That's something that my congressman is afraid to do. He holds telephone town halls, but he hasn't held one since 2018. So
it's another reason that they don't like her and people. I mean, I'm not going to defend Trump. I don't want to get pulled into that one. But the political establishment, the Republicans that are trying to push back against all this, and the Democrats who are waving the morality flag, we all know what they're doing. It's because they're trying to stick to their base. They don't want anything to upset this established base of voters that they have. And that's why you won't see a lot of them on town halls, or when you hear them speaking on town halls, they don't say anything. You know, you ask them a question, they'll ramble on for 20 minutes, and you still won't get an answer to your question because they don't want to give an answer that will lose them voters. They just want to stand there and say nothing. Now, Marjorie Taylor Greene, President Trump, they got in front of a camera and they spoke. They said what they meant and meant what they said. Like I said, don't want to get pulled off into the whole, conspiracy theories and everything like that. They convinced people that they believed what they said and said what they meant. And that resonates with people, especially after decades of, politicians standing on a microphone and not saying anything.
Yep. All right. We'll probably wrap this one up. Any other closing comments? It was a great talk, I think, here.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. Like I said, there's not a lot of opportunities to sit down with people and talk about this stuff. And I'm glad we could do it. I know we're on opposite sides of the political spectrum, but that's one of the things I'm trying to do. I got a Facebook group called The Coalition, and that's what I'm trying to build is Democrats and Republicans and everybody on all sides just coming together and speaking with civility, And it's going about as well as you think it would, but we're making progress, man. It's slowly but surely. There is honor in effort. So.
Yeah. Well, even Stacey Abrams here in Georgia says it's a quote that I've used several times. Identity politics is going to be the death of us.
Yes. And it's not, thank you. Lord, thank you. Somebody said it. And it's not a bad thing. I just wish people would stop associating identity politics with equality because that's not what we're going for. I think we all need to recognize our individual contributions to American society and recognize that equality and justice are not specifics to any of these groups. But we need to make sure that while we're focusing on equality for one group, that we're not sacrificing justice for all groups, Yeah.
All right. Well, appreciate it. We'll see what happens in the game later today. I think you said you didn't really have a fight in it, but thanks for spending
I'm secretly rooting against Tom Brady. I wasn't going to say that. I'm secretly rooting against Tom Brady.
Yeah, another thing we agree on. All right.
Well, I appreciate the talk, man. Thanks for having me on.
Yep, have a good one.
All right, brother. You too.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Goddamn Liberals. We welcome your feedback. Please comment on this episode below or send us an email at feedback@gdliberals.com.